When he appeared before Congress last month, former special counsel Robert Mueller pointed out that the threat of Russian interference in the next election remains high.
In your investigation, did you think that this was a single attempt by the Russians to get involved in our election, or did you find evidence to suggest they'll try to do this again?
No, it wasn't a single attempt. They're doing it as we sit here, and they expect to do it during the next campaign.
But as we prepare for the next election, experts are still divided over whether Russian manipulation of social media helped to tip the 2000 election in Donald Trump's favor. However, a new report in Science magazine lays out a blueprint for trying to assess how social media is being affected by foreign influences and what can be done about it. Joining us to talk about this is one of the authors of that report. Sinan Aral is the David Austin Professor of Management at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He's a founding partner at Manifest Capital and author of the upcoming book, The Hype Machine, about how social media and how it disrupts our world. Sinan, good to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
I want to quote from the report about having the tools to research manipulation, in which you write, "We have promising research tools, but they have not been applied to election manipulation, mainly because of a lack of access to data and lack of cooperation from the platforms, driven in part by public policy and political constraints." Our Jake Ward, our tech correspondent, says the same thing, that the information exists. Our ability to fix it exists, but we cannot marry the data with people like you who are able to say, I got the data, I can fix this.
What we do know is that at least 126 million people in America were exposed to misinformation from Russia, 20 million on Instagram, 10 million tweets on Twitter to 6 million followers. We know that they targeted swing states, Russia did. We know they attacked voting systems in all 50 states. And we know that 27% of Americans in the final weeks, voting age Americans, in the final weeks before the election were exposed to fake news. What we don't know is what effect this has had in 2016, 2018, or going forward in 2020, or in Brexit, or Sweden, India, Brazil, and so on. The point of the paper is to say we do know how to measure what the effect of manipulation is on elections. It is eminently knowable. We have the tools to protect our democracy. We're not using them.
Why can't you get the necessary data?
So it's a thorny subject, but one that I think can be solved. So it can be summarized in what I've called the transparency paradox, which means essentially that the platforms are being simultaneously pressured to be open and transparent about what's going on. How do your newsfeed algorithms work? How do the targeting algorithms work? How do the trending algorithms work? Who gets to see what and why? And at the same time, they're facing extreme pressure to be secure and private with data. And so these two things are in conflict. There is an industry academic partnership called Social Science One, started by researchers at Harvard and Stanford, that is attempting to get Facebook data in order to study things like election manipulation, political communication, and so on. Craig Silverman at BuzzFeed reported this week that two articles, one, that the data has been delayed, the data that's been promised by Facebook has not been revealed by Facebook, and two, that the funders of the initiative are threatening to pull out by the end of September if that data is not released to the researchers as promised. Facebook has responded, and their response is essentially that we're having difficulty anonymizing and securing the private data of individuals to do this in a legitimate way. I think that that is a true and real response. I do think that they may be delaying a little bit, but I do think that it's not easy to thread the needle of the transparency paradox. They have to be open and transparent and secure at the same time. They have to use tools like differential privacy to release anonymous data sets, and that's what they're working on.
Let's talk. You just mentioned privacy. I want to bring it up in a different context because you wrote this as well. Although privacy legislation may prohibit the retention of consumer data, such data may also be critical to understanding how to harden our democracies against manipulation. To preserve democracy in the digital age, we must manage these trade-offs and overcome multidisciplinary methodological challenges simultaneously. What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that we are attempting to think about how to regulate privacy through legislation, and we need to think about how to legislate election integrity at the same time. Election integrity requires auditing. Auditing requires examining data on individuals. Privacy requires keeping security and data. The way to do both is to try and achieve both simultaneously. We have to use anonymization techniques like differential presidential privacy that guarantee to some extent private information is kept private, while the analysis that's required to audit elections and what the effect of interference might be on election outcomes at the same time, to be able to
would
do
be good
that
if we're actually auditing elections rather than just opining about whether they interfered and whether they changed votes.
And it's going forward. It's not just a retrospective on 2016.
Yeah.
What about 2020? What about liberal democracies around the world?
Yep.
And by the way, we've discussed, you and I, fake news in the past. The fake news of tomorrow looks a lot worse than the fake news of today, with deep fakes.
Things that we won't even
rapidly.
Until now, we've been telling people there are ways you can try and prevent yourself from consuming fake news. That's all changing faster than we can.
They say seeing is believing.
Yeah.